You're listening to the Mannered Podcast. There's something fascinating about manners. You can live your entire life thinking you're a perfectly polite human being. You say please and thank you, you hold the door, you tip your server, and then you travel. Suddenly, the rules change. In one country, it's rude not to finish your food. In another country, finishing your food means you hated it. In some places, eye contact means respect. In others, it means you're challenging them to a duel. Manners are like the operating system of culture. They're invisible until you accidentally hit the wrong button. Today's guest is someone who has spent a lot of time navigating those invisible rules. Eric Mink is a longtime friend of mine. We go back to Kansas State days, fraternity brothers, Chiefs watch parties, concert buddies, and now our kids are growing up in Colorado together. Eric has lived and traveled to over 40 countries around the world, including a long stretch in Singapore. In fact, while he was overseas, I actually lived in his house, which is either a sign of deep trust or questionable judgment. We might get to that today. But today, we're talking about what happens when manners travel, how different cultures define respect, how we sometimes get it wrong abroad, and what the rest of the world might actually admire about American culture. So today's episode of Mannered is all about cultural manners, how to be curious instead of clueless, and how not to accidentally insult an entire country before dessert. Let's get into it. Eric, welcome to Mannered.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Man, I can't think of a better person to be here with me for this episode, but I'll tell you, you came to mind with like a million different episodes as I was thinking of all the different things that you're kind of an expert in the realm of etiquette with. I mean, you know, I originally thought skiing would be a good one, and, you know, being a sports parent or just, you know, being the only Chiefs fan in Denver kind of thing. But, you know, you are somebody that you obviously have the authority when it comes to experience and travel. I mean, how you said 40 different countries?
Yeah, like prepping for this, it was fun to kind of create the list and remember a few of the countries that I've been to that I kind of forgot. So
yeah. I mean, that kind of blew me away. When I saw that, I was like, wow. I mean, I feel like sometimes like I've been to a few places, but nowhere to the extent of where you've been. And I'm excited to hear about some actual, you know, some of the stories. We're going to talk a lot about the culture in these different countries and then how we fit within that culture and some, you know, tips and things like that we can look forward to. But before we get started, I guess, can you tell me and the audience, you know, what created that spark for travel for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really sure, you know, you kind of prompted that question and I started thinking about it, and it wasn't like a big family thing. Like I was actually born in Belgium, but we were in the US. I think I was like the age of 4 by the time we moved back, and I didn't like travel internationally again until after college. Everything else was Midwest road trips, you know, a couple flights back east to visit the grandparents, stuff like that. But you know, my grandparents actually traveled a lot in the 70s, like before travel was like really a thing. And I remember kind of peeking through some of their photo albums and stuff where, you know, my grandfather's on like a camel, like in, you know, Egypt back before that was like cool and Instagram was a thing, all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe inherently there's some of that in there that I was drawn to that I didn't even realize.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's amazing on multiple levels, but you, like me, you're a Kansas boy, you know, born and raised. Do you think that, I don't know, I think about this for myself, but do you think being born kind of in the breadbasket center of the country, do you think there's maybe some seeds planted in us that we want to sprout our wings and kind of take to the world a little bit?
I don't know, man. Like I know just as many people from the Midwest that like don't really vacate anywhere, right? Like they just kind of do their thing and enjoy life where they're at. But I think it's kind of, you know, person by person, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I do think that, you know, when we talk about being from the center of the country, I would say, and of course I'm biased because I'm from there, but I think that we kind of are, you know, I guess neutralized a little bit when it comes to American culture, because a lot of times when we talk about like traveling abroad and say like, what is it like for Americans to go to XYZ place? America, we have a lot of localized and regional cultures within America. So it's going to be kind of different depending on where you're coming from. But, coming from Kansas, I feel like a lot of times, the things that we were raised with for the most part are, the traditional, look someone in the eyes, handshakes, and, what kind of clothing you should wear for certain events and that sort of thing. But do you think that, that has helped, I guess, ground you and who you are when you're representing yourself in your country when you travel places?
Definitely. You know, being from the Midwest, you do have that sort of, I don't know, you want to say sort of stock manners, right? Like ones that everyone always thinks of, the sort of base. And I think, I don't know if this is Midwest or just kind of military family stuff, but like you have a little bit more humility. Like you're not trying to like push your chest out and, show off as much is sort of my opinion. You kind of put your head down and work. That's sort of like the ethic. Yeah. And I think that translates a little bit in travel for sure.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. Do you think, what was your first culture shock moment?
Honestly, like the first one that I was thinking about was more domestic than going across the pond or switching latitudes or anything like that. It was when I used to go out to visit my grandparents. They lived in Pennsylvania. When I was a kid, we would just kind of hang out their place. But then as I got into like middle school, we would take like a weekend or whatever and go into the city, or we would go down to Wildwood, which is like South Jersey Shore kind of stuff. Okay. And just the difference in attitude and the difference in the way that they do things, right? Like everything from meals, Kansas meals are like meat, potato, vegetable. Yep. There it's a lot of Italian, so big giant meals that last a long time. Yeah. Just the abruptness in which they talk to each other, like, a little bit mean, but if you're like that all the time, you don't even notice the mean. But coming from Kansas, it was like, man, I can't believe the deli guy's talking to a patron like that, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think that was probably the first like realization, because you think about Midwest travel, whether you're in Nebraska or Oklahoma or Kansas or everyone, the speech pattern might change, but the manners are pretty much the same. Yeah. But yeah, you switch coasts, like it gets a little weird when you're dabbling there for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, same kind of deal. It's like it was first travel within the US that kind of opened my eyes to realize, okay, there's different ways of being and doing things. And sometimes, you had mentioned kind of that East Coast mentality is like, you got to kind of get with it to be heard, Yeah. And this isn't all about kind of business etiquette in this one, but, I do a lot of business out there now, and it's, you got to kind of elevate your presence a little bit or else you don't really get noticed. So,
yeah. I think, a lot of that's just population density a little bit too, right? I think about that a lot when I consider which countries have been a bit more crass or a bit more, I don't know, mean or whatever you want to say, whatever adjective you want to use. But like for me, like China was the meanest country I've ever been to, and not like directly towards me, but just in general. But when you've got that many people living in such a condensed space, like you've got to assert yourself in order to like get on a bus or, whatever. Like that's just how it works in order to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started doing this idea for this podcast, you say the word etiquette or manners, and it indicates a couple of things. On the etiquette side of things, you kind of think of this hoity-toity, prim and proper, the Emily Post type stuff, But really, true manners and true etiquette is having a deep understanding and respect of whatever it is, people, the planet, animals, whatever. The list could go on. So this show's really more about that. On like trying to really just understand, So, talking about, sometimes when we have that culture shock moment, and we experience what we believe is, mean, it's just that's what the cultural customs are used to in those places. And so, as American travelers, we we can either embrace that or fight it. And, I think, I think you're probably on the same side as me of like embracing it. And I know that because I've seen you in action with that. So I guess with that being said, what are some, to get us started, some tips that you take with you, and just kind of quickly adapting or embracing that culture, whether you're on vacation or you're going to live there for an extended period?
Yeah, I think my biggest part is just opening my mind a little bit and changing the perspective, right? I think one of the problems we have as American travelers is setting expectations that, we're going to be able to get exactly what we get here anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big problem, and something that I get frustrated with a lot of American travelers is they don't have the right mindset. And, in my opinion, obviously,
Yeah.
to just appreciate what they're doing and where they're going and why they're going there. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go to Italy and have a McDonald's. Like, one of the things that I think of when I get mad about travel or kind of joke about travel. One time I went to Uruguay, and the first morning, I was super jazzed. We had gotten in late. I was just stoked to get up early and get a good cup of coffee and just sit there and watch the world go by. Right. I think I got up at like 7, and there was literally nothing open, nothing. And I don't think it opened till like 9 or something, like nothing. So I ended my first cup of coffee in Uruguay was from McDonald's, and I was so disappointed in myself that like that's what I ended up doing. But there was nothing else open, so it was either that or like go through the first morning without caffeine, which wasn't going to happen either.
Yeah. Thousands of miles for the egg McMuffin.
Exactly. Horrible.
I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I'm the same way if I literally go to Breckenridge for the weekend. I don't want to eat something that I normally eat when I'm here.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, travel is experience. So it's all part of it's part of the package,
Yep.
and, and do you, I mean, from day one, did you have that adventurous spirit, or did that kind of cultivate along the way?
I think a little bit of both. Like, like we kind of talked about at the start, there wasn't a lot of people that I knew from Kansas that were traveling like I wanted to travel, and that I decided to travel. My first trip was my first adult trip, I guess. You're talking post college on my own, not just going to like some beach resort to get drunk or anything like that. Like, we took a trip to Costa Rica, and I think it was like 05, 06. And that was like before Costa Rica got, populated and expat central. And, I went there with like the normal US mentality. I remember renting the car and being like, all right, I got to get from A to B as soon as possible, and yada, yada, yada. And, it took a little bit of adjustment, just the way that they live, the pace, the flow. It's just so much different. And I remember being like, all right, I got to, we're going to try to go up for this fishing trip, and we're going to be there at sunset or sunrise. And, the guy just shows up when he wants to show up. And then, like, it's not an apologetic, because it's just like, that's how we roll, man. Get used to it.
Yeah.
And that was like a real eye opener for me. I remember being like, man, I'm just adding all this like added stress to my life for no reason. Where this guy's just down here like fishing on his own time, like jackpot. Yep. So I think, once you start seeing things like that, you start opening your mind and seeing things in a different way. That does cultivate, right? Like that little, that appreciativeness and the difference in way that people roll. And hell, that guy's got more smiles on his face than most people we know.
Oh man. I mean, I tell so many stories, and you just reminded me of, one of my favorite lost in translation moments is, so I lived in Costa Rica for a while, and I was there for a few months. That was my study abroad, that I did down there, and I lived in San Jose. And, before you go, they're telling you like differences in cultures and like things like, hey, what's appropriate there, what's appropriate here, don't do this, and all these things. And so it's like crammed in our heads. So one of the things they talked about was the time difference, or the lessened strictness with time. So they call it tika time, so in Costa Rica, it's perfectly acceptable to be like 15 minutes late. Like,
I would say 30.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
Like
30 minutes, you're totally cool. And even on the Caribbean side, it's even longer. It could be an hour and you're okay. So I kind of knew this going into it, but there were some things I forgot about. And early on, when I'm living there, I called her my Tika mom. Her name was Rita Rodriguez, sweetest, wonderful, most wonderful woman in the world. Like, she was just such a great person. And she spoke 100% Spanish. My Spanish was like Tarzan Spanish at the time, whereas like I knew enough to get around and to get into trouble basically. But the first weekend that we're going to go on this excursion, and she tells me in Spanish that I have a ride coming to pick me up at, let's say, 9 o'clock. I think it was like 9 a.m. And so I'm ready to go. I got my backpack. I got my stuff ready to go. I'm sitting in the house. It's like 9:05 and I hear beep, beep, like out front. And I look out and there's this little guy on a motorcycle, like this little moped thing out in front of the house. And I looked to Rita and I was like, hasta luego. It's like I'm leaving and I head out the door and I'm walking towards him and he kind of gives me this funny look and I get on his bike. I like straddle up and I'm behind him, like riding on this bike, and he looks back and he's like smiling and laughing, and I was like, all right, listo. And he kind of like looks so puzzled, and then I'm kind of puzzled. And then my Tika mom's walking out of the house with money, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, no, I'll pay.
Yeah.
And so I start grabbing my money to pay the guy. And she's like, it reminded me of the end of Goonies where it's like, no vitamin. It's like, I get off the bike and she tells me, and I can gather, and as much as she's telling me, that was the newspaper delivery guy.
Oh, nice.
He was like 5 minutes, after they were supposed to pick me up. So it was another 25 minutes and the van rolls up. I was like, oh, okay.
It's all coming together.
All right, yeah. But, another 2 minutes, I would have been like headed all over San Jose with that dude. So
practicing your route. I like
Absolutely. So, that's the fun, right, of travel,
100%.
like those kind of experience. And a lot of times I tell people, it's like, it's just about trying, it's like, you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to do all the right things, but as long as you're trying, that's part of the goal here. But, for you, what are some, you've experienced so many different cultures. What are some that just stick out as like really like different from American culture, as far as like everything from dinner table etiquette to, what are some things?
Literally every place is a little different, whether you're in Europe, Argentina is the same way. Like the late dinner thing, that always messes with me. Like, we were in Portugal this year, and the first available dinner reservation was like 7, and with a 8-9-year-old, like that ain't happening.
Yeah.
And we would show up at 7 and be waiting at the door essentially, because same deal, they don't open right at 7. It's whenever they're ready, and no one else shows up till 8:30, 9 o'clock. Argentina was even worse. Like I remember people wouldn't even go to dinner till like 10. They'd have little kids, and I could never figure that out. Yeah, it's just every place is a little different. Some places are a little more like rule follower. Like I think Costa Rica is a great place to go first because they're really chill. Like they do have some rules, but no one's gonna yell at you.
Yeah.
Like they might explain it to you, but they're not gonna like get all bent out of shape.
Yeah.
Japan's a little different. Obviously, like they're very like by the book,
Yeah.
and you better be a little bit more on point. So yeah, it just depends. But I think the biggest takeaway, I've been to all these places and the people are always so nice. Like as long as you're trying, as long as you're putting forth effort, as long as you're not being a jerk about it, everyone's cool, man. Like everybody's on the same wavelength. Like everybody's here to like make a little money, like help out their family, be decent humans. Like that's probably one of my favorite things is, I try not to focus on hitting Rome or all the big places that are on like bucket lists. Like I get just as much joy going to, some random little town and just talking with somebody. Right. Like, and those are the stories I'm going to remember. I'm not going to remember the like perfect picture at this like beach that was on a top 10 list or whatever. I'm going to remember the little town, the little cafe, and, the guy that I just sat and like tried to BS with in broken Spanish.
Without a doubt. That'll be what I remember are those moments where you really, it goes from being a vacation to a real experience where you feel like, okay, like I will remember this. I mean, Siri and I have this great one from, we're in the Dominican Republic, and we were staying at a resort, and we're not resort people.
Yeah.
We don't like being like isolated. We like to like be out in the mix and everything. And so we scheduled a taxi to come pick us up and take us into the city. And our taxi driver picked us up, and we're talking along the way and find out that he played for the Texas Rangers.
Nice.
It was like a Dominican baseball player, and he gave both of the girls like these signed baseballs that are up there. But that was like my favorite part of the trip, is just talking to him the entire way and like learning about, what's going on there. Because, when you're kind of in that glass box, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. And there's nothing against it. It's not quite for me, but it's, but yeah, it's really kind of experiencing that culture.
Yeah.
So,
I think anyone like has that exact thought process, right? I was talking with a buddy over the weekend who had spent a few months in India working when he was younger, and he has the exact same stories, right? Like you ask him about it, he doesn't talk about the Taj Mahal, he doesn't talk about any of that. He talks about the one time he sat down and had a meal on a guy's like floor,
Yeah.
I mean, just sort of ad hoc.
Yeah.
And like that's the stuff that people remember years later. It's not what you kind of think it would be, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. So with all the different places you've been, have you personally made any mistakes that you can remember or think about?
Oh yeah, I've made all kinds. The good news is, I try to learn the word sorry everywhere I go. I try to act a little meek, like just my bad.
Yeah.
Like, but really, like I said, for the most part, you might get some dirty looks, but nobody really yells at you or says anything for the most part. The one exception I could think of was we spent a little bit of time in Sri Lanka, and this is when I was younger, so we were doing like more of like the hostel kind of backpacking, like chilling in chicken buses, traveling around, and we had gotten on one, and it was packed. There was only one seat left, and I was with what would be my wife at the time, and again, gentleman Midwest, right? You give her the seat. So I gave her the seat. What I didn't realize is there was a Buddhist monk sitting there, and Buddhist monks aren't allowed to touch or be near women.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either
Wow.
at the time. And he didn't like get like mad, but it was like visible hard no.
I mean,
like,
they can't get mad, right?
yeah, I mean,
Isn't that like
it was close. Like it was,
Really?
it was like, he didn't like yell, but it was, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
and like, I think we figured it out, because I think we had read that like they weren't allowed to touch women, but I didn't know the like sitting in close proximity was a problem.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he was basically like, get up. And so we both just like stood, because I didn't want to sit next to him. That would have been awkward. Like, like so yeah, we just like sat or stood in this chicken bus while the monk rolled by himself solo on a double seat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's like little things like
That's a
that
great
happened.
one.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like no one's yelling, no one's like
Yeah.
fighting about it. But like that's about as serious as it got. Was a little bit of a stern look and a hard no from a monk.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a prime example though of, these things that we just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you to know that? We could do all the research in the world, and definitely even during this podcast, if you watch the whole thing, you're still going to go out there.
Oh yeah.
So it's more about the framework today, but no, that's a great one. You mentioned trying to learn sorry in all the different
Yeah.
languages. Do you make a point to try and learn the language of everywhere you visit, at least like a limited amount?
I do, but it's hard. It was really hard when we lived in Singapore, because we traveled like, multiple weekends, and it would, Malaysia, Indonesia, like whatever, anywhere that was closed, Thailand, like, and you would get a few of them, but then you'd mix it up,
Yeah.
right? Like you're like, oh, well, that was last weekend's trip, so whatever, that one's not going to work anymore. But I did try. I still do. The problem is I'm old now, so like my memory is even worse than it used to be. So I joke my default is I screw up and go back to Spanish. So I was using Spanish in Portugal and got called out on that a few times, which is always good.
It's kind of close.
Yeah, that's what they would say. They give you that look like, what?
Yeah, it's
And
like
then-
to them, it's got to sound like underwater, because that's
Yeah.
what Portuguese sounds like to me. It's
Yeah.
like Spanish underwater. So
but their English is good. But a lot of the Portuguese spoke pretty good English, and so I had a couple times where they were just like, instead of just the look, they would be like, "You know that's Spanish, right?" Yeah. You're like, "Oh, my bad."
Yep. So that's So I love. Yeah, I only can speak Spanish, but same deal. If I'm like going somewhere, I'll try and learn a little bit just to try. Once again, just to try. And it's always funny with Spanish because at one point in time I was fairly decent at it. Now it's like I should just stop answering when someone's like, "¿Hablas español?" And I'll be like, "Sí, un poquito."
Yeah.
And then they'll go into whatever, and I'm like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, if your pronunciation is good on a few words, they just assume.
It's got to be weird for them that they're like, "This guy said he speaks a little Spanish and then doesn't understand anything."
Yeah, exactly.
I was hoping that they would ask like, "¿Dónde está la biblioteca?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, over there." Yeah,
I love it. That's how I am.
Yeah, it's so hard to but to keep it up, but. I'm always hoping one of these days I'll pick it back up. But, it's nice with things like Duolingo now. I mean, we didn't have that when I was in college, but that can make quick work out of learning a language.
Yeah. And like, the downside to that is like Google Translate makes everything so easy now. So I think people are very lazy, like including me. Like, I was in Japan last month for a ski trip and like I learned like the normal 3 words, but that's it because I didn't even try because I knew I could just use Google Translate. Yeah,
absolutely. So, well, I think you're doing a good job because it would be pretty darn hard to know over 40 different languages.
Shit.
But let's go back to Singapore because I guess before we go to Singapore, was that the longest duration you've ever lived in another country?
By far. Like most places were like month, maybe 6 weeks. I mean, most places were like 10 days or something. But Singapore was 2 years. And then we did a ton of travel like around that area. And so like those 2 years I did all of my Asia travel. I haven't really been back except for Japan since then. So
yeah. And you were in Japan not too long ago.
Yeah, it was just the first 2 weeks of February.
Yeah.
So
like I said, folks, I think he's in the CIA. I'm pretty sure.
I wish. My wallet would be a little fatter, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I wanted to dig into Singapore a little more, not to dig into Singapore, but I don't want, I'm always scared I'm going to get like flagged by whoever on the internet, be like, he said he wanted to dig into Singapore. This guy's crazy. But with, there's a big difference between a vacation and actually experiencing life in a different country. And not everyone has that experience, but I'm wanting to kind of get into your mind as far as like, because you can be there long enough to where you really see it all. And for me, it changed my life. Like it absolutely changed my perspective on life. I mean, I've never been the same since in a good way. For you, talk a little bit about. Bless you. Sorry. Talk a little bit about that element of really living somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean. We knew it was going to be 2 years. It was a contract. So like we knew our like window, but to be fair, like Singapore is probably one of the easier places to live, right? Tons of expats, very clean city. They speak Singlish, which is basically English with like, a bit of weird stuff thrown in. So yeah, I mean, I knew what the transition was going to be. I had traveled a fair amount before that. I had done a month or so in a couple places. I think the biggest weird thing I wasn't expecting. So Singapore is a nation state, but it's made up of like a very diverse groups of people, right? You got Chinese, Malaysian, and Indians are like the top 3. And those 3 cultures are very different. Mm-hmm. And they are not huge fans of each other in general, I would say, which I didn't really know until we got there. You think about Singapore, everyone talks about it being like a melting pot and all this. And technically it is because all those people live there, but there's a lot of like sort of hidden animosity. Like I remember when we were looking for an apartment, getting shown, different places. And if Singapore, it's just all high rises. So you're just, going up to the 30th floor, going to another one, going up to the 10th floor and whatever. And we would get off on some of the floors and the real estate lady would just be like, nope. And I was like, why? And she's like, too many Indians live here.
Really?
it smells like curry. You don't want it to smell like curry for
Oh,
whatever.
wow.
And so I was like, well, that's weird. And
Yeah.
there was just all these little kind of like
Huh.
under the waves sort of things and off comments and weird
Yeah.
stuff like that happened a fair amount that
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting. But it sort of made sense a little bit, right? Because there are such different cultures and they're sort of competing
Yeah.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like the biggest thing. So not only are you transitioning to living in like a new place and like what you would consider to be a new culture, but there's also sort of like 2 or 3 other cultures going on too. So you kind of have to learn all 3 or 4 at the same time, which was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. In that process, did you become like a fan of any local sports teams or anything like that?
No, but we, you know, at the time, you know, this is whatever, 10 years ago or something, like they were kind of going through this new phase where they were trying to become more healthy, like as a nation, because they were all very skinny,
Yeah.
but they weren't what they would call healthy. So they had this weird marketing campaign for, I think it was like, don't be skinny fat or something like that, something weird. And
Okay.
like, but they were like heavily introducing gyms and running and like stuff like that. So I did like a half marathon there and some other things, but they also had, what they called like basketball,
Netball.
yeah, that was like big there. Huge like racquetball, not racquetball, badminton, like all these different sports that you're like not used to.
Yeah.
But then like all the stuff that, you know, as Americans, you kind of want to dabble in still. Like we had to go up to like the American naval base, which was up north, and they had a softball like league. So we would go up there and play softball sometimes
That's
and stuff
cool.
like that. So like, you know, you could get a little taste here and there. But yeah, in terms of sports, we didn't do a whole lot like otherwise than
Yeah.
just working out a bit. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I asked that question just because I always find that is like, for me, like when I lived in Costa Rica, like became Saprissa. Props to my Saprissa, but like I became this like diehard fan of this Costa Rican soccer team. It's like you basically had to choose either you were Saprissa or La Liga, and
Yeah.
like the whole town would separate and almost like in a violent way.
Oh yeah.
Like for these soccer games, and that was one of my favorite experiences of like beyond the under the covers basically.
Yeah.
Where no tourist is ever going to be able to experience that feeling of being a fan
Yeah,
of this team you never really knew about. That was kind of special to me.
for sure.
But it's going back, with Singapore, and you touched on a thing I wanted to talk about. So with those multi cultures within the culture, I mean, that's something I've also kind of experienced, because you have a whole new lens for a whole other place.
Yeah.
And like in all of the stuff that they deal with, it's
Yeah.
like, and oftentimes, I think we project our country upon the rest of the world of like, we're really going through it here, and it's like, it's like everybody else is too in their own way.
Yeah, usually more severe than the problems that we have. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, tell me a little bit about that, and like just the, on the cultural, not political side, but just, being on the kind of inside of those feelings and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think one of the good examples was the home help or whatever you want to say, like the live-in nannies. Most of them, when we were there at least, were Filipino, and so there was all these little Filipino ladies, and almost everyone had a live-in nanny, whether you had a kid or not. Like basically had a live-in maid, and almost every apartment had a little like room that was built for that purpose.
Oh.
And they would work 6 days a week. They would do literally everything. They would cook, they would clean, they would take care of the kids, they would do everything. And I think at the time the average pay was like $600 or $800 somewhere in there. But they also got like free room and board, and then I think there was like you had to pay for their health insurance. We didn't have one, but like a lot of our friends did. But that whole realm of society that was living there, making somewhat of a pittance. Also, they could send money back to their families because that was their best opportunity. Yeah. And it was just sort of like an overlooked and underappreciated piece of that world that I had no idea about. And it was interesting to kind of see and see how it all works. I don't know.
Absolutely. Do you find yourself feeling, I mean, empathy is the wrong word, but you find yourself taking, like, once again, American values, whatever that might be, and applying that to wherever you are, and having kind of this, like, I, I don't want to say bleeding heart because it's the wrong word too, but it's like, I guess, let me tell you how I feel, and then you tell me if you experience the same thing. So, like, wherever we go, I have this, I feel bad, like, for certain situations and things like that. And I apply kind of like what our standard of living here elsewhere. And I was just wondering, like, if you kind of are the same way.
100%. It's a tough thing to look at, right? Like the poverty levels in almost any country, like especially in Asia, though, is like it's on a different level, right? Like you just can't comprehend some of it till you see it. And to be fair, like Singapore was different, obviously. Like Singapore is like great, in terms of that. I have no idea where they put their homeless and like that, whatever. But I mean, we would go to Indonesia and it was just crushing what you would see. But on the other hand, you got to think about the people that do come over. A lot of Indians came over on like short work visas to do construction, but like that's their best option. Like it might not be great in our eyes, but obviously it's got to be a win in theirs. Otherwise there wouldn't be, hundreds of thousands coming over every time to complete all these skyscrapers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was, once again, the Dominican was kind of eye opening because it was not a super wealthy place, but the whole time they're like, oh, the Haitians have it really bad.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, it's like, if you're saying someone else has it worse, and like we took a trip to the sugar plantations, which was just like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's like you talk about, like, I mean, it was literally like daily survival there.
Yeah.
To get paid enough to eat for the day. And it was hard, and I don't like that element of like tourism, of like the zoo tourism is what it feels like, where you're like literally pulling in your bus and like with your, your big gulps and like, oh, don't wave at the children. It's like, I hate that kind of environment. So it's just hard for me. And it's hard to not, to get involved in things like that. But it also, I like it for the fact that I come back here, and once again, that added perspective of kind of exactly what you said is like, we have it pretty good.
We need to be thankful. Like, that's what I mean. I don't know. Yeah. You look around the US right now, it just feels like everyone's bitching about something. Yeah. And it's like, man, take a step back and recognize how freaking lucky you are. Like, I wish that would be ingrained in more people, because that's part of the reason that we take our son traveling. Like, to have, like, obviously we live a fairly posh life, even by US standards, here we are in your little media room essentially, right? Like, you've got to get out and experience and see what the world looks like and what other people live through in order to appreciate what you have. So that's a huge part of the travel that we do, and why we sort of avoid the all-inclusive and all the stuff that I'm not a big fan of either, so that you can go out and see the real world a little bit. Yeah. And, it might not be that you're entrenched in it, but at least you're getting a view of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of provides a nice segue, because once again, living somewhere else, you also get to experience something that not a lot of people experience: American tourists. So, and not just American tourists, but tourists in general. It's like you get to see people on vacation, and you're no longer on vacation because you're living there. I know that was a weird experience for me. Tell me, like, that from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing, right? Like, it was really interesting because Singapore's not a big, like, come and see a bunch of sights. It's more like, check out the fancy buildings, like, let's do some shopping, like that kind of thing. There's not a ton of, old school natural beauty or anything like that. Yeah. Right. So it was weird to see that. I'm still not a shopper. I certainly wasn't a shopper then, when I didn't really have any money. So I just couldn't understand how these people, we had tons and tons of Chinese that would come over and just spend, because that was their big opportunity that year to, like, buy stuff. And
oh, wow.
I remember going to the airport for other things and just seeing, like, bags upon bags, like giant, just stacked up. They're paying the extra $70 to get all their stuff home or whatever. Like it was crazy.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was weird. I wouldn't say there was a ton of Americans. Like we had some folks that came and visited, and but we didn't see I wouldn't say we saw a ton of American tourists there. A lot in like Thailand, a lot in Indonesia, Vietnam, like other places. But you know, I felt like Singapore was often like a 2-day stopover to somewhere else.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy to, I mean, just witness all the different people. And I mean, once again, you've done it a lot more than I have, so you've experienced a lot more travelers and cultures and things like that. In your mind, like, what country has the best travelers? Which has kind of the ones that need a little work?
Yeah, I don't know. I always liked hanging out with like Scandinavian people. Like they were always like super chill. Pretty adventurous. Yeah, like Germans overran a few places that we would go to in Thailand. So I had a little bit of a weird, but it wasn't really like bad. It was just like, you know, half of it was jealousy too, because they would come on vacation for like 5 weeks.
They travel a lot.
Yeah. They
like, I feel
around.
like I see Germans all the time on vacation. Yeah. It's like, where do we sign up for their vacation plans?
That's what I used to say back then too. I'm like, you know, I would be proud. Like we took a couple like 3-week trips while we were over there, and I thought I was like hot stuff.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, we're on like week 5 or, you know, whatever. I'm like, damn, that sucks. Yeah, I would say over the years, I would say we are probably one of the traveling populations that needs some work. Chinese definitely need some work. And then recently I used to kind of dig Aussies, but Japan was pretty eye-opening. The Aussies there were pretty rough McGruff, like just very crass. And, you know, the Japanese are very quiet. You know, like when you get on a train there, it's like going into a library. Like they don't talk. Like it's really quiet.
Really?
And we had like Aussies just like yelling. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan. One of them was like driving like drunk and crazy, like around Niseko, you know, stuff like that. And I was just like, man, like that's
kind of
And I've heard that same take from many people that I know that have been to Japan, that like certain areas of it have been sort of like overrun, and you know, it's a little bit chaotic with Aussies. So that's maybe good for us, right? Like makes us look a little better.
We're not the worst. All right. We're looking up.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah. No, and I think once again, you know, it's hard because most people, when they're traveling, they're on vacation. So you're already like, you know, like trying to empty your baggage of like, all right, I'm on vacation, bring my margarita and we're going to, you know, get wild. So there is that element, which I do think, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is from the other countries I visit, the perception from other countries about most Americans that we overdrink, you know, and things like that. So there's even a lot of jokes, and like in Latin American, like there's a lot of jokes about drunk gringos. You know, it's like that's like the primary content. So, you know, but I think it's that element of it where it's like, you know, the work hard, play hard aspect, where it's like we're going on vacation. It's like time to let loose. And I guess for subject matter of this show, it's like, yes, you're on vacation, but once again, you're representing more than yourself, you know. And I know from you, you know, talk a little bit about when you're traveling, do you have this feeling that you represent more than yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're naive if you don't think that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's hard to recognize that, especially kind of what you said. Like you work hard, you play hard, you have a finite time on vacation, you want to get it all in. You know, like that's like another big thing that I always hear about Americans is just like rush through and check things off a list. But that's because we got to get in, you know, a big trip in 7 days or whatever, whereas Germans are taking 5 weeks. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely feel that you're representing your country, and I feel like that even more recently, right? Like with the way the politics have been. Like I've gotten more questions and things like that regarding America and politics and all this stuff than I ever did in, you know, the previous 20 years of travel or whatever compared to the last couple.
Yeah. Wow. So when you leave and you come back home, what's the first thing that excites you?
It depends. Like when we came back from Singapore, I was like really missing Mexican food. you know, just got back from Japan and not the best winter to come back to. So yeah, that was like utter depression. I literally think I might have gone through a little mini depression.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's getting back to like the ease of things, being able to go to the grocery store and get whatever you want. Being able to drive wherever you want. Singapore, we didn't have a car, so it was all public transport. Anytime you spend any significant time in Europe, you're shopping by like a day or two, whereas here, it's always at least a week, right? You go on like Sunday, Monday, normally stock up for the week. You have your little meal plan. Like, everywhere else in the world, that's not how it works, right? You're running off of a tiny fridge. You're maybe getting like 1 or 2 days of food at a time, stuff like that. Like there's little niceties that you miss. Does it outweigh? I don't know, man. Like I would think I would live somewhere else. We have it pretty good here with like family and helping like raise our son, and he's in a great spot, and we love all the things that like Colorado provides. But with everything going on, sometimes I'm like, man, living in Portugal sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, it gets crazy, and I definitely get that feeling. I mean, for me, like one of the biggest like reverse culture shocks I had when I got back from Costa Rica was I went to the grocery store, and I'll never forget, I went to the bread aisle, and I was just like, had this moment where it's like my whole life I've walked down that bread aisle, and all of a sudden for the first time I noticed it. I was like, holy shit. Like my Tika mom would go absolutely insane.
Yeah.
By just seeing the sheer number of choices for bread, let alone toothpaste and peanut butter and applesauce. I mean, that to me was like the most jaw-dropping thing when I came back. I was like, oh my God, like that is, it was crazy. So, we talk about kind of those experiences for you. Like what are some things that you come back and maybe notice, like things about our manners and stuff here? That is it heightened, like your sense of like like I wish we bowed when we greeted each other.
I do like I think the respect aspect is a lot different in a lot of countries, right? Like you were talking earlier in the show, the respect towards each other, the respect towards your elders, the respect for your city, your country, like whatever, right? I do feel like that's lacking, and I'm not talking in a hoorah sort of way, more of like a clean up after yourself. Like, don't expect somebody else to pick up your trash. Like, your city looks like crap because you're allowing it to look like crap. Like, that thing I notice a lot. I think the biggest thing is just, we don't have that family structure here like they do in a lot of countries where, like Singapore, they would often have 3 generations living together. Yeah. It was your responsibility to take care of your parents. Wow. And like that's something that we don't have, right? That's why we have so many other, like I think why we have like a lot of homeless issues, why we have a lot of people going into like the sad assisted living. Like no one wants to take care of their parents anymore, which it's difficult. I'm not saying it's like an easy thing, but like obviously it's working for other countries. I don't understand why we can't do that here. So there is that piece of it that I miss, and I really just miss like Singapore was so smoothly run. Like everything was on time. Like you go to like the DMV or whatever it was, it would take like 2 minutes. Like
really,
but it was because everyone had a respect for their job too. Yeah. Like, that might not be the job that they wanted. It might not be their dream job. They might not be making the money that they, for some reason, anticipated they should, but they still did their job to the best of their ability. Yeah. Like that's something that we're lacking here, I think, and also respect for those people too. Yeah. There's no like, I don't look down on people that like do my oil change. Like they make this world work just as much as I do. Yeah. And I think that that's lost too here. We have this weird, almost like I don't know, like a level of society, like a caste system, but without the definitions, right? Like, and that's a huge thing that I think a lot of places don't have.
I mean, I actually talk about that all the time. I think you're right on the money there. And it's funny, every single episode I've done of this show so far, that the respect thing comes up. It's like, it's definitely an issue, and it's getting worse.
100%.
I mean, it's just, it's the, regardless of what you want to call it, but the common courtesies of just eye contact and just, awareness. Yeah. I think, we talked a lot in like the past couple episodes, I've been like on this kick of talking about gym etiquette and things. And we're talking about like the number one issue is usually lack of awareness. People just like not having awareness of their surroundings or other people's needs or anything like that. So I definitely think, Americans, that's something we could definitely work on is just our awareness and, and once again, trying, going to these other places, trying, realizing that you're representing more than yourself. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. And I think it's great advice. And, I want you to
It's simple
stay
advice.
Here.
It's just hard to execute.
I want you to stay here. I mean, we are so lucky to live in such a great country. So, we gotta, I think going back to what you said, it's like, realize this is where you live and it's our responsibility to make it better.
Yeah.
It's like, and so, that I think that's kind of the key here.
Yeah. And I think, we have a good opportunity with the kids that we have, right? Like we're raising good kids. We're setting good examples in that realm. I try to sort of portray that when I'm traveling too. Like, I think it's great when someone says, "Oh man, you're an American. I wouldn't have guessed that." Like that to me, that's a great thing for someone to say. Like you were nice enough to care about what we do and to really focus on our country, not just come by and flick a cute few photos and like move on. Like that stuff's great. So I think that's part of it. We can always take solace there that we're at least changing it a little bit. But yeah, it'd be nice if you could flip the switch somehow.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And you kind of touched on another subject I wanted to get to, because this is a mild pet peeve of mine too, in the opposite direction. One thing that does drive me nuts as well are Americans that travel and also talk crap on our country. It's like where to show respect to another country, you don't have to demean our country in the process. It's like, so I've seen that a few times when I've been out and about where and I get it. It's a psychological thing where you're trying to show extreme, appreciation. And a lot of times some people do that by having to have a negative associated with it. It's like, you're so much better. Like, and I just say, once again, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But, you don't have to do that. We can represent our country well. We definitely have things to learn, but realize that, that's not gaining appreciation by defaming, the country you're from either. So, that's just something I think about too. So, moving on, and I know I've had you here in the hot box here for a while. It's like you're going to be like, this is the worst vacation I've ever taken.
I will not be coming out to Central Park again.
Yeah. So I guess as we're kind of wrapping things up here, and I got a couple of questions, but what's on the horizon for you? What's the next destination?
We don't really have anything international on the loop. Like I said, we were in Portugal over the summer, Japan. Where we also like to do kind of similar, right? Like we do a 1 month thing during the summer a lot, where we go and we just pick a random place in the U.S. to try to gain that appreciation domestically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird thing. I don't know many people that do it, but I would highly recommend it if you guys are listening. We picked a little town up in New York a couple of years ago. Not near anything. It was like a little tiny town called like Delhi or Delhi. I'm not even sure now what it's pronounced. We did a month in Southern Oregon, again, like kind of off the beaten track.
Yeah.
But again, like if you just take the time, like integrate, like appreciate the little things, go to the state fairs, go to the little bars, like go to and just listen to people. Like that's some of the things that we've also really liked. So we're going to try to take another one of those this year. We haven't picked our spot yet, but we hope we can do that again while we still have the time, right? As the kids get harder into sports, I think the summers are going to keep getting shorter and shorter.
It just gets crazier and crazier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good thing, man. Like don't go to New York City. Don't go to Vegas. Like go pick some little place like a little further away and just sit down, get the right perspective and enjoy it. Like there's great places all over this country that you've never even heard of, that I've never heard of. And that's a good thing to go see.
That is a great point, Eric. And I think truly that could be one of the solutions to really getting back to good things. Is I think a lot of times we're constantly, it's like the gladiator, right? It's like, are you not entertained?
Yeah.
It's like, there's this constant seeking of entertainment that drives us. So it's Vegas, New York City, Nashville. Those are the knee-jerk reactions, but it's really like to embrace local culture where the real, real things are happening, real people, real like daily lives kind of immersing into that experience. I couldn't agree more. This is such a big place that there's a lot of cool places to go within our own country. And when we talk about experiencing, manners in different cultures, you'll find a lot of different cultures right here in the good old US of A as well. So there's a lot to experience, but, I guess in kind of taking us away, I mean, and you kind of have said this throughout the day, but I guess give me the top 5, tips for either travelers or people going to live somewhere else on some things just to help them in their awareness or their homework for learning different manners and different cultures.
Yeah, I think the first, like we've talked about, set expectations. Recognize that things are going to be different. You're not going to have the food. You're not going to like interact with the people in the same way. Do a little bit of research, right? Like even if you don't have it all, even if you can't remember it all, maybe someone will give you like a little bit of a side eye and you can take a second and be like, oh yeah, crap, I wasn't supposed to do that. I kind of forgot, but now it's in my head, and learn from it, right? Like one of the things that pisses me off is someone will tell a tourist not to do something or this is bad or whatever, and then they do it anyways. Yeah. Like it's one thing to be like innocently ignorant. It's another one to just give someone or a country the finger. So learn from it, do the research, learn the language a little bit. And, make friends locally. That's how you're going to learn the most, right? Yeah. Like when we lived in Singapore, it was like meeting people that had lived there, like we didn't live in a high rise. We got a cute little like place above like a fish shop, not like a fishmonger, like a pet fish shop. Right. Yeah. And so it was just us and the locals. Yeah. And like, it was such a better experience than like living in a high rise with a bunch of people from England and Australia and America. Yeah. Right. Yep. So immerse yourself and just recognize how lucky you are to be able to share that time and place with people that you don't know. And, the chances that they're good people is pretty freaking high. Absolutely. That's what's crazy, right? Yeah. You think of all the chaos and bad stuff that goes on. Like, the biggest percentage of this population are good people that are all just trying to like get by, enjoy times, like bring as many smiles to their face while pissing off as few people as possible. Like that's all it is, man. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. It's not hard. It's not hard in theory. It's probably harder in concept, especially on vacation, right? Because you talk about, I want to get this, I want to get this done. I want to, whatever, slam a stop in every 2 days or whatever. Yeah. And I get it because you want to check the list, but you're gonna get more joy out of not checking the list and just enjoying the people than you are checking the list.
Completely agree, man. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think one of my favorite things, I don't know if I call it a saying, 'cause it's just something I say a lot, but I tell my sales teams all the time, it's like, I don't believe really anybody, at least 99% of the population wakes up every day and they walk in to probably brush their teeth and no one looks in the mirror and says, I'm going to be a shitty person today. It's like, for the most part, we're all just going through life's routines, different circumstances, different things are hitting us. But at the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of people trying to figure it out, And so it's just try and, be in that process of understanding and all will work out, So
100%.
But man, Eric, I feel like I wish I had like 2 years to really like have you. We should do a travel podcast where you really just like talk about all the different, places you've been and everything. But, I've kept you here in the hot box long enough. But thank you so much for being here.
If you are one of those people that doesn't really want to experience a new place, but you just want to experience the US somewhere else, like, stick to those all-inclusive, stick to those cruises. Like that's totally fine. Like you don't need to expand if that's not what you want, man. If you want chicken tenders and extra large sodas with lots of ice, just do it, man. Like it's fine. But if you want like the real experience, like you got to set your mind to it and execute and appreciate those other places.
Well said. Yes, sir. Speaking of experiencing other places, I need Eric to experience his home as I've kept him here late enough. But there's something fascinating about travel. You leave thinking you're going to see the world, and you end up seeing yourself a little differently too. Manners change from place to place, but the core idea is pretty universal. Pay attention, respect the people around you, and maybe learn how to use the chopsticks before dinner starts. Thanks to my good friend Eric Mink for joining the show today. We didn't even talk about like while I lived in your house while you were in Singapore. Crazy stuff happened, man.
Speaking of some stuff on Facebook.
Yeah. But Eric, thanks again for letting me live in your house while you were in Singapore. And I'm still not sure if that was hospitality or insanity. But this has been Mannered. And as always, remember, mind your manners and explore the world. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.